Part 1. Ma-lul, Famine. 1. The Horn of Africa. In the lands of the Somali, it had barely rained for 2.5 years. From the dagger point of Cape Guardafui, the very Horn of Africa aimed at the belly of Yemen, to the hills of Ethiopia in the west and the plains of Kenya in the south, the year 2010 was dry. The nomads and the farmers saw the clouds scudding east from the Indian Ocean over the red plains and the yellow hills, but no rain fell. They saw their animals weaken and their crops struggle to stand with the weight of the dust, and they began to worry. There are 3 seasons here: the Haga, Jilal, and Gu. The Haga is the windy season, from May to September, when the Indian Ocean monsoon blows clockwise, taking the cool water from the southern seas up the coast of East Africa, around the curve of Arabia, Iran, and Pakistan to Bombay, the ancient trade route of the Swahilis. Since at least 1000 BC, the dhows have sailed east in March, returning in September, riding the anti-clockwise currents that take the now warm water south again. With the monsoon, India is only 3 weeks from the coast of Somalia. Against it, the journey can take 3 months and is often fatal. Thousands of miles from the coastal ports of Bosaso, Mogadishu, and Kismayo, trade in the interior of the Horn of Africa still keeps time with these natural rhythms. Once upon a time, when the climate was predictable, the Haga would come to an end with the short rains, Deir, in October, that would give way to the steady accumulation of heat and dust that was the dry season, Jilal. If God willed it, the heat would build and turn humid, eventually breaking into the blessed rainy season from March to May, Gu. Then the thorn trees would spring immediately into a luminous green. Overnight, the sand would grow a light fuzz of grass. The camels and goats of the nomads would turn fat. Sometimes the Gu didn't come. Then the heat that built and built had nowhere to go. When the Haga arrived again, it swirled the desiccated sand into little twisters that had a life of their own, getting into everything. The skin on the animals shrank, and the nomads watched the sky, full of fear of the Abar, drought. Sometimes the Gu failed for more than 1 year, and that usually spelled trouble. In a part of the world where man's struggle with nature for survival is so finely balanced, famine and war have always gone together. Now the Gu had failed for 2 years in a row, and the short rains were perilously late. Under a hardening sky, the people grew uneasy. In the countryside, the land had nothing to give, and so the inhabitants had nothing to offer their rulers in tithes or taxes. Across most of south-central Somalia, the rulers were the Islamic extremist group Al-Shabaab. It needed all the taxes it could get to fund its massive war, to drive what it saw as an infidel government backed by the United Nations out of Mogadishu and into the sea. Militias press-ganged truckloads of men away from the farms and forced them to the battlefield, and they took the meagre harvest as zakat, a contribution to their holy war, and the people went hungry. To make matters worse, Al-Shabaab had banned all food aid that bore the U.S. logo and ejected the World Food Programme from its territory. At the same time, the U.S. Office of Foreign Assets Control put sanctions on Al-Shabaab. This meant jail sentences for aid agencies that paid the militants for humanitarian access, which, after 20 years of war, was the norm for delivering aid in Somalia. And the few aid ships that did sail risked the infamous pirates. So, in what agencies had been calling a perfect storm since the drought began 2 years earlier, the people of Somalia would face one of the most telegraphed emergencies the world had ever seen, largely without assistance. In the city, the Battle of Mogadishu, as Al-Shabaab's offensive was known, intensified street by street with trenches, snipers, and indiscriminate shelling. The militants' war effort drew all the men, resources, and even children into the fight, just as the twisters of the eternal Jilal sucked the dust of the hard-baked plain into the air and lent everything a brown tinge.